Welcome to the Dealing with Mental Health Issues in the Family presentation, which is brought to you on behalf of the Family Matters Peer Support and Recovery Program at the Mood Disorders Association of Ontario. This presentation is an accompaniment to the Family Matters Guide for Families, which you can find on our website at mooddisorders.ca. My name is Daniel, and I'm a peer support worker with the Family Matters program. Mental health issues are family issues. When someone in the family is having mental health issues, it tends to affect everyone in the family. In a family unit, mental health issues aren't just the problem of any one person. Although one individual may be most obviously experiencing a mental health issue, that doesn't mean that they're the only one who is suffering. Family members often don't know how to respond or how to deal with a loved one if they're experiencing mental health challenges. Particularly if family members don't have much knowledge or experience with mental health issues, they may be at a loss as to how to deal with the situation and not know how to best support their loved one. It's important to acknowledge that families can be perhaps the greatest source of support for someone experiencing a mental illness, but sometimes family dynamics, relationship difficulties, and communication patterns can also affect the mental health of each individual in the family in negative ways. This presentation is designed to inform family members of some ways that they can be supportive and to note some common pitfalls as well. What can you do if someone in your family is mentally unwell? First and foremost, it's important to take into account the experiences and perspectives of your loved one. Having a straightforward and non-threatening conversation in which you ask about your family member's well-being and voice your concerns is a good place to start. Rather than using diagnostic language or assuming that there's something wrong with your loved one, it's usually best to talk with your normal, everyday language as much as possible. Perhaps most important to remember is that once you've broached the subject, your primary job is to listen. Try to understand what your loved one is experiencing and to get what it's like for them. This will not only give you a better sense of where the other person is at, but will help to create a safe and supportive line of communication between you and your loved one. I remember in my own personal experience a time when I was very depressed and I was trying to communicate that with my family members. And what I was really looking for more than anything was some validation, a sense that they got what it was like for me as much as they could, that it was really a serious experience that I was having and I was suffering at the end of the day. And I wanted them to really get the degree to which I was suffering so that I didn't feel quite as alone and isolated in my own suffering. So I can't overemphasize enough the importance of really just listening and getting, the feelings behind what your family member is saying. Even if you aren't entirely sure or can't make complete sense of everything they're saying, just the emotion behind it, and that sense of connection, of validation, of understanding can really go a long way to help minimize the suffering of someone when they're experiencing mental health issues. Here are some general guidelines for interacting with a family member experiencing a mental health issue. Do check in with the other person and ask how they're doing. Simply asking how your family member is doing is a way to show that you care and doesn't assume that there's something wrong. It gives your loved one an opportunity to share what's going on with them if they feel comfortable doing so. Keep in mind that often people are very reluctant to talk about mental health issues because they're inherently difficult issues to talk about. And there's often a lot of stigmatization that goes on for people when they are experiencing mental health issues, and sometimes a lot of shame that goes along with that. So check in and ask how they're doing, but don't necessarily frame it in a way that entails that they're definitely have a mental illness or anything like that. Just normal conversation is the best way to go. That being said, you can express your observations and concerns in a non-judgmental manner. If you do have concerns or notice certain things about your loved one that are troubling you, it's okay to let them know what your concerns are. It's important to emphasize, however, that these are your concerns and observations, and that you want to know what's going on in their world. It's important to convey a caring and non-judgmental tone. Ask them what they need and inquire if there's anything you can do to help. Rather than assuming you know what your loved one needs or what they should do, ask them if they want your support. They may or may not be open to receiving your support or suggestions at all. Often at the Family Matters program at the MDAO, we see people come in who have conflicts with family members because they are kind of too invasive or trying to get them to do things that they don't necessarily want to do. And, to assume that you know what's best for your family member and how they should recover can be a double-edged sword. Sometimes it can be helpful, but other times it can be perceived as sort of imposing on them, and maybe it's not the best thing for them, whatever it is you have in mind. So the best thing to do is just to ask them what they need, and see if there is anything you can do to help, rather than assuming you know what they should do. And then, if they're open to it, provide options for support, recovery, and treatment. If they have expressed a desire for your help and support, which they may or may not, researching options and resources for your family member can be very helpful. Again, rather than telling them what they should do, it's best to present options and let them choose. Do your best to be compassionate, patient, and understanding. Although it might be trying, frustrating, painful, confusing, and even scary at times, your ability to be compassionate, patient, and understanding will go a long way. This doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice your own needs for the other person, but rather that you're willing to give some space for communication, listening, and shared understanding of what's going on. I facilitate some of the Rat for Families groups at the Mood Disorder Association of Ontario, and one thing that becomes evident from the beginning of the group all the way to the end of the group is that the more family members are able to really be patient and compassionate and understanding with their loved one, they also start to be more patient, compassionate, and understanding with themselves. And as a result, there's less stress, there's less conflict, and just overall more peace of mind. It doesn't necessarily solve anything in terms of, fixing their family member or getting them, into treatment and recovery, but it certainly creates a much more open and calm space in which that can occur. And the family unit itself becomes more peaceful and more harmonious as a result. Do educate yourself about mental health, recovery, and treatment options. The more you know about the issues your loved one is dealing with and the possible resources that are available, the better position you'll be in to be a support to your loved one if and when they want your help. Try to learn more than just about specific diagnoses and medical perspectives on mental illness, but about recovery, community resources, peer support, and other pathways to wellness. Tell your family member that you love them and are there to support them. Simply knowing that they have someone in their corner who loves and supports them can make a significant difference to someone suffering from mental health issues. Having family support can provide a sense of connection and security, especially in uncertain and difficult times. I often think that sometimes the difference between the people in our society who are struggling the most with mental health issues and those who experience mental health issues but are doing pretty well is the amount of support they have, and just the knowledge that there is supportive family there if and when they need that support can make a huge difference to your loved ones. Do take care of your own well-being, including asking for support for yourself. This point can't be emphasized enough. You need to keep yourself well if you're going to be of any help to your loved one. There's an analogy that's often drawn between a caregiver or supporter and the instructions given on airplanes for oxygen masks. They tell you to put your own mask on first before helping someone else with theirs. When supporting a family member with a mental illness, remember you may be in need of support for yourself. Mental health issues are family issues. They affect everyone involved. Access your supports and look for resources and help in dealing with your situation. The Family Matters program at the MDAO is one example of the types of supports that are available for family members of individuals with mood disorders and related issues. Again, the Rat for Families program basically emphasizes this point throughout. It's an 8-week program in which family members look at how do they take care of their own well-being while supporting someone with mental health issues. Often what we hear from family members when they go through this program at a certain point is just sort of like, wow, I can't believe I had stopped doing all these things that I normally do for myself. No wonder I feel so stressed out. No wonder I'm not doing so well. And when they start to do these things, that whatever they are, that helps them feel well, whether it's just relaxing or exercise or socializing with friends, or even, there was one person who stopped working to kind of take care of their family member and realize that they need to go back to work and kind of get on with their life, both for their own well-being and also to give some space to their loved one as well. Do accept that the mental illness is beyond your immediate control. This can be a very hard one for people to get their heads around, even for individuals who are experiencing mental illness firsthand. A lack of control or perceived lack of control is a source of fear and anxiety for most people. Not being able to control how your loved one is doing and the rate of recovery can be a difficult thing to accept. Remember that your loved one's recovery is their recovery, and while you can offer your love, support, and present them with options, they ultimately are going to have to make choices and find what works for them. Focusing on things that you can control, again like your responsibilities and your own wellness, can help to alleviate some anxiety and make things easier on you and your loved one. And again, just emphasizing the point of listening to the other person. There's a quote by Winston Churchill that goes, "Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen." Sometimes what people need most is for someone to really listen to them and get what they're going through. By simply listening, you can help make your loved one feel validated with their experiences, connect with them, and make them feel less isolated and alone. While your listening alone may not be enough to solve your loved one's problems, it can certainly be a major way in which you can support them in their recovery. Your ability to listen to your family member, especially when they're talking about things that may be triggering for you or hard to listen to, can greatly reduce the shame and guilt that they may be experiencing and reduce the stigma that's often associated with having a mental illness. Now let's get into some of the don'ts. Don't blame the person for what they are experiencing. Nobody wants to become unwell or develop mental health issues. While it may be tempting to point out specific behaviors or ways of thinking that might be contributing to problems, or even mistakes they may have made in the past, this is likely to be interpreted as seeking to blame your loved one for their mental illness and may cause them to become defensive. Remember that a compassionate, non-judgmental approach usually works best. Likewise, don't blame yourself for the situation. Playing the blame game or trying to figure out who's at fault for the current situation is usually a fruitless and counterproductive endeavor. While there may be things you recognize you could have done differently in the past, taking the blame and the shame that often comes along with it isn't likely to help you or your family in the present. Looking at how you can change your ways of interacting, communicating, and responding in the present and going forward, however, can be useful. Don't tell the person to snap out of it or get over it. These are some of the most frustrating statements for someone experiencing mental health issues to hear. If someone could simply get over their mental illness, they probably would, and they probably wouldn't need anyone's support along the way. This is clearly not the case. Statements like this are based on fundamental misunderstandings about mental health challenges and should be avoided at all costs. Don't try to control the other person or tell them what they should do. While it may be tempting to give advice or tell your family member what they should do, this is usually not a very helpful approach. People generally don't like to be told what to do, and the same holds true for someone who's mentally unwell. Attempts at controlling your loved one's recovery, likewise, are counterproductive. People who are empowered to make their own choices in their recovery, even if that means making some mistakes, are more likely to recover in the long run. The truth is that nobody knows for sure what is best for a given individual in their own recovery, and it's often the individual who knows best in the moment what they need. Don't think you have all the answers, or that you have to have all the answers. It's okay not to have all the answers for how to help your loved one. In fact, nobody has all the answers when it comes to mental illness. Mental health issues are complicated problems that are unique to each individual. Part of an individual's recovery journey is in finding the right answers, that is, the solutions that will work best for them. Don't place expectations upon the other person and their progress, or lack thereof. Each person's journey of recovery is unique. Different people recover at different rates and in their own ways. Placing expectations on a loved one only adds to the pressure and stress that they may already be experiencing. Giving your family member time and space to explore the issues they're facing can be important for recovery in the long run. Don't belittle them or be condescending. Just because a person is experiencing mental health issues doesn't necessarily mean anything about them as a person. Mental illness affects people from all walks of life, of varying levels of education, from different cultures, ages, and backgrounds. treating somebody as less than capable or not treating them with respect on the grounds that they have a mental illness is a form of discrimination that contributes to stigma and can actually hurt your relationship with your family member. Encouraging the steps that your loved one does take and supporting them to move forward is helpful. Focusing on their shortfalls or perceived deficits is not. Don't assume that they can figure it out on their own. While you certainly can't solve all your family members' problems or figure everything out for them, it would also be wrong to assume that they can recover on their own. Everyone needs support at certain times in their lives, and having the right kinds of supports is important for people in recovery. Letting your loved one know that you're there for them and presenting them with options for support can be very helpful. Don't allow the other person's issues to consume your own life. When someone in the family becomes unwell, some family members naturally tend to shift the focus of their lives towards helping their loved one get better. There's often people we see in counseling in the Family Matters program at the MDAO who will initially start talking to us about all the issues with their family members, understandably, and it's only after talking for several minutes that sometimes we just have to ask, so how are you doing with all of this? Because family members naturally tend to sort of forget about how they're doing and focus on the person who seems to be struggling the most or has the most obvious issue or is kind of labeled as the person with the problem, whereas we try to frame it that if there's a mental health issue in the family, it's really a family problem and everyone's affected. And often the people coming to us for support are family members of people with mental health issues, in addition to the people who are primarily experiencing mental health issues themselves. So it's good to be caring and supportive, but it's also important to keep on living your own life and doing the things you need to do to take care of yourself. Focusing exclusively on your loved one's issues can sometimes add to the problem and make them feel added pressure or guilt. If you're doing well in living your own life, it sets an example for your loved one and it ensures that you will be well if and when they want your support. Don't give up if you're not getting immediate responses or results. Change can take time. Recovery is a process, not an event. And recovery is often a process of growth, transformation, and change, and it doesn't happen overnight. Being patient with your loved one's journey and holding hope for them in their recovery, rather than demanding immediate results and becoming frustrated at setbacks, is a way that you can support your loved one. Again, these are general points to keep in mind when dealing with a family member experiencing mental health issues. Unfortunately, there's no definitive prescriptions on how to act, what to say, or what to do. Each person, family, relationship, and situation is different and calls for different ways of responding.